up late at night isn't unfamiliar. Not yet showered, a test the next day that hasn't been studied for, homework due the next day, reading due in the morning. And almost immediately, the mind goes to negotiation. One assignment can be done during lunch, another during community time, and time essentially gets bargained and rearranged until everything fits. Because it has to. These are our responsibilities. But when there's space to reflect on what truly feels meaningful, moving the body, learning, reading, writing, family, these things tend to only happen when they're intentionally chosen over screen time. And that choice doesn't happen as often as it probably should. This pattern of giving our attention to screens instead of the people and the things we truly care about is something that many adolescents know all too well. We live in a world where technology is everywhere we look. Every day we use chatbots and social media and softwares. I mean, look at AI, which is growing larger and larger every day. There's truly no lack or shortage. But what I would say we lack is human intelligence. And I don't mean the knowledge that you get from books or from knowing the Pythagorean theorem, but instead what is said to have made us so successful as a species. The ability to connect with one another, to have humanity, unity, and individuality all at once. So what happens to us as a species when we can no longer connect? Dr. Rick Potts, the head of the Smithsonian's Human Origins Program, notes that the complex brains of modern humans allowed them to interact with their environment and with one another in new and in different ways. They were able to create broad social networks, many times including people they'd never even met before. They created art and music and rituals. They created a complex, symbolic world. And this was a key factor in the survival of Homo sapiens. That same ability to connect that allowed our species to survive thousands of years ago is still critical today, except now, instead of hunting or trading, we face new threats when these connections begin to weaken. Research co-authored by psychologist Julian Holt-Lunstad shows that lack of social connection heightens health risks as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day or having alcohol use disorder. In fact, countries like the UK and Japan have appointed special ministers tasked with combating this public health crisis because phones are not evil, but they are powerful. And when we let them replace real connection, we lose something essential. We lose the thing that made us human in the first place. And if our species once survived by growing closer, then our future absolutely depends on doing that again. So during my sophomore year, I took the school bus, and this 5-year-old girl began to sit with me. And we would just chat. She would ask me about the things I had in my backpack, and she would play with my hair. She used her curiosity as a way to entertain herself and interact with me. And as I'm sure many of you can relate to, at the end of the day, my tank is on E. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but of course, I have enough energy to scroll through Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok. But when this girl began sitting with me, I no longer got to do this, and in ways, I can't lie, this frustrated me. But not because she was too young or because she was annoying, but because the instant gratification of scrolling feels different from the slower and more effortful reward of conversing with a 5-year-old. So eventually, I offered the girl my phone to play games on, and I even went as far as downloading games that I thought she would like so she could play on my phone while I listened to music. And I watched her play, and I asked myself if I was part of the problem. Am I doing to this little girl what has already been done to the rest of us? And what's important to note here is that none of this was accidental. Sean Parker, one of the founders of Facebook, admitted that they created the platform around an essential question: how do we consume as much of your time and attention as possible? So by engineering these social validation feedback loops that give tiny little bits of dopamine, they exploited known vulnerabilities in human psychology. Parker and his team acknowledged that they understood the potential consequences of this, especially for younger brains. And I quote, "We did it anyway." So how could a teenager ever recognize that the same device used to call their parents could also steal their most valuable currency? Time. So here's how it works. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter involved in anticipation, motivation, and reinforcing behaviors that feel rewarding. So after we eat, after we laugh with friends, after we exercise, our bodies produce dopamine, which encourages us to do the same things that brought us satisfaction. And social media exploits this system. Trevor Haynes, a research technician in neurobiology at Harvard Medical School, notes that likes, comments, and other forms of online interaction activate the same reward pathways as slot machines and cocaine. And the key part to this is that dopamine spikes not when you get the reward, but right before. So every buzz, every notification, every bubble is basically your brain going, oh, something might be there. And that might is what hooks us. It keeps us checking and refreshing and waiting for that next tiny hit. And the problem begins when we start chasing the easier reward, the reward that comes without the effort and the vulnerability, and maybe even the awkwardness of real human connection. And of course, this matters most during adolescence, because this generation and all those that follow will be immersed in technology. And the compromise is not turning them off entirely, but instead how we, adolescents, use it. Adolescence is a critical period from the ages of 10 to 24 where we develop social, emotional, and executive functions, and we become more concerned with our friends' opinions than our families, which ultimately shapes our identities. But now, considering this vast and interconnected digital world, our identities are not only shaped by our environmental surroundings, but also by online influencers and the trends that populate our feeds. According to the National Institute of Health, adolescent brains are more malleable or plastic than that of adults. And this accounts for the ability of adolescents to learn things more quickly due to the overproduction and depletion of neurons and synapses. So as an adolescent, this is the best time to take advantage of learning as many new things as possible. Do more hobbies, play more sports, write, read, study, all of which contribute to problem solving, critical thinking skills, and emotional regulation that we need to grow up and live independent and hopefully successful lives. I like to compare this to ultra-processed foods because, yes, ultra-processed foods look like food, and they taste like food, and they signal satisfaction, but they don't nourish you. And in fact, they keep you craving. And yes, they're convenient in certain circumstances, but they were never meant to be the default snack every time. And just as adolescence is not the time for alcohol use or drug use, it is also not the time for doom scrolling and excessive screen use. This might just be the developmental equivalent of living off of ultra-processed foods. Yes, it looks like connection, it feels like rest, but it leaves the brain undernourished. And when you look at the numbers, it shows. So in my digital adolescent class here at Country Day, I did a survey in the upper school asking about screen time, and I got hours ranging from about 4 to 9, which is a lot. And this comes from musicians and athletes and overall very academically involved students who are afforded the opportunity to participate in various different types of extracurricular activities. But still, the numbers were so high. And then when I looked at my own screen time over a week period, I saw similar patterns. So all of this, yes, it's overwhelming, maybe it's scary, it's a lot, but it is also a choice. We are not helpless. But the 9 hours, 7 hours of daily screen time are not going to cut themselves. So the first step is making effortful choices to stay away from the phone. This is how we sleep better, how we connect better, and see the success in ourselves that we strive for. Because the reality is, real connection was never meant to compete with algorithms. If you have kids, maybe utilizing screen time limits, because setting boundaries can set the foundation for future healthy habits. But then for teens and young adults, including myself, this is not something that can be done for us. We must value our brains, our minds, and hold ourselves to a higher standard. And of course, the adults in our lives matter too, not as enforcers, but instead as examples. Because what a healthy relationship with screens looks like is something all of us are still learning. Thank you.